Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I'm Logan Lyles with Sweetfish Media. I'm joined today by Mark Montgomery. He is the Chief Marketing Officer at Craneware. Mark, how's it going today, sir?
Good morning, Logan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You and I were just having a great conversation about customer experience. We're going to be talking, you're uniquely positioned, I think, to touch on this hot topic for a lot of organizations today. Before we do that, though, Mark, as we do with all our guests, I want to give you the opportunity to give us a little bit of background on yourself and a little bit of context, what you and the team at Craneware are up to these days.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I'm based in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Craneware PLC. And I've been in the healthcare IT and healthcare software industry as an operational and strategic executive for most of my career. And I'm excited to be a part of Craneware. I've been here just over 6 years. And Craneware is a unique company. We service healthcare providers in the U.S. to help them improve their margins and their operational efficiency so they can invest and turn that margin back into their care support and their care strategies to better serve their communities. The way Craneware does that is we provide software and solutions, which are basically software and services that allow health providers, so hospitals and health systems, of which we partner with about 1,500 of those throughout the U.S., and we allow them to identify and address risks related to their financial and operational performance. And as my role as Chief Marketing Officer, I have a unique opportunity here to manage and help lead our teams across the entire customer experience. So the traditional marketing functions, branding, lead generation, customer acquisition, employee education, and customer education, those types of activities. But then also we have the customer experience and customer management teams that report into our Chief Marketing role. And that is, imagine post-contract, everything from implementation, training, support, success, and renewal. The entire customer lifecycle experience really is the responsibility of our teams in ensuring that we're creating the right branding and messages before they become a customer, and then create the optimal experience for them once they are a customer.
Yeah, I love it. So as we introduced you, your official role is Chief Marketing Officer there at Craneware, but you mentioned to me, it's almost like you are Chief Markets Officer because you've got operations, customer experience, even some other market-facing roles outside of just marketing, messaging, branding, demand gen coming up to your role. Do you see that as a trend with marketing leaders? Is it kind of just the nature of your organization that it kind of emerged that way?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it probably is unique just depending on what the strategy and the life cycle of a specific organization may be.
Yeah.
At Craneware, the Chief Marketing Officer role is responsible for really three major areas: the typical marketing and branding that we talked about, the corporate development to identify and cultivate merger and acquisition opportunities or business partnership opportunities that may be out there. And then the third area is the one I talked about, that customer experience. Some people will say, well, that just seems very unique that you'd have marketing and the customer management under the same umbrella reporting up to the leadership team. And it is unique. And I think the value, however, of it is the fact that you get a 360 around that customer experience and that market experience to be able from everything that you typically do in that customer acquisition strategy and process around branding, messaging, value proposition, uniqueness, and lead generation, which we're all in part of, all the way through delivering those solutions and the experience and identifying the value return and the return on value, the return on investment that the customer is receiving. So I would suggest to those that are in marketing, and I'll give you an example of how it works, but I would suggest that if you don't have that whole life cycle of the customer, that's fine, because many companies and organizations don't organize that way.
Sure.
But be really good friends with the person on the other side and the people in those teams, because they are delivering back content for the customer acquisition side that you want. So we can use our successful customers to create webinars, educational sessions, white papers, social media posts, referenceability for prospective customers. And we take those stories, we invite them to come and speak at our customer user experience groups and our financial performance summit. And we take those story points and those content pieces and we put them back into our marketing pieces so we can then continue to brand and differentiate and show value for potential customers coming in. So it's a nice life cycle that we can build. And the key is I've got really good people in all those areas that organize and run these operations that are interested in the success of the company, and then also are interested in the success of helping one another in their specific roles.
I love what you said there about if you are a marketing leader that doesn't have operations and customer success rolling up into your functional area, like you're fortunate to have here, Mark, become good friends with those leaders. It sounds like what you guys have been able to do is have that shared vision of, when we work together, we're all going to be more successful. I'm glad you touched on, this feedback loop from customer success and operations, telling the stories, pulling out the key nuggets, the wins for your customers that your company is partially responsible for, and feeding that back to the market-facing teams, marketing and sales. Any advice for folks on how to tactically do that, if the lines of communication aren't necessarily open between pre-sale and post-sale within their organizations today?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it starts with culture and what the company's about. Leadership's role, I like to describe leadership's role as the ability to create and communicate the vision of what the organization is trying to do, and then enable the organization to go pursue it. That's what really leadership is about. And that starts creating your culture. And to answer your question, when everybody's aligned to what that vision is and you're empowered and enabled to go pursue it, then org charts and titles become way less important. And doing what's right for the customer and for the stakeholders involved in the organization becomes the right thing to do. I love our culture here at Craneware. I think it's fantastic, and it's based on a couple of principles. And I would say these can cross over in any organizations, and you may call it something different, but it's really around these three areas. At the base of the pyramid or the bottom, the foundation, it's values, right? What is your value statements? What are your codes of conduct? What are your sort of expectations for you and your team to treat each other and to treat your customers and to treat your suppliers? At the top of that, then, once you have a good foundation and you have the right moral fabric and the right value system, it's what is the vision of the company. And that's what I talked about earlier is a common vision that everyone can understand, articulate, and buy into. And then finally, in between there, you have what I call velocity. That's all the operations. That's selling, that's acquiring customers, selling your goods and services, your products, getting them satisfied with those, and then finding ways and opportunities to grow your business. And velocity includes how well you run, your HR function runs, your technology runs, how well your finance department runs. All those things are part of velocity. And if you have the right foundation with values and you have a vision that everybody buys into, then the velocity part becomes the day-to-day and the year-to-year that becomes very important. And that's what drives the culture. And finally, I would say this cross-functional, and the communicating when you're working across organizational boundaries, if you will. If people understand the vision, they understand the plan, which is that velocity plan, your tactical plan, and they know their individual role and how it rolls up into that. That's where the magic happens. And it's certainly, we've all been in places where it's worked really well. And we've all probably been in moments in our careers, if you've been around or will be around for a little while, where it just doesn't seem to be all quite working at the same time. And it's really because you're trying to align to that vision, to execute the plan, and then to know what the individual role is. And that's how I think we at Craneware try to rally the organization. I was telling you earlier, we're a unique company in that we're founded and headquartered in the UK, in Edinburgh, Scotland. Yet virtually 100% of our customers, our revenues, and our operating margins come from US-based healthcare providers. So we're working across multiple time zones, an ocean, two very unique cultures, but we all have to rally around the same vision and the same plan. And that creates a lot of great opportunities and some occasional challenges, but some really great opportunities for us to try to align everybody and keep the messaging clear.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to circle back to that consistent message, especially since you have some experience, as you mentioned, managing a team and influencing the culture across two distinct cultures, two different countries, different time zones. So I want to come back to that. But you mentioned something there, Mark, I want to hang out on for a second. You mentioned, defining the company's vision as being that foundation. For folks who are interested to dig a little bit deeper, actually, just yesterday, we had Garrett Justice from Lucid on, and we talked about a resource for looking at answering some of those core questions for your company, a book called The Advantage from Patrick Lencioni that I definitely recommend. So you may want to check that out. Mark, you kind of said in passing there something about finance. And, since we're talking about customer experience and how your culture can affect customer experience, how you can build a culture that is connected and views the entire customer journey to improve that experience for your customers. You mentioned something about finance. And I think we talk a lot about, sales and marketing alignment. Okay, what's the experience for the customer from the time that they, see an ad or consume some content from marketing and then have a conversation with sales. But we tend not to think about, well, how do they receive an invoice? Right? What those sort of operational things, those are part of the customer experience. Can you speak to that maybe a little bit? Some of the areas that you guys have realized maybe impact the customer experience that aren't normally part of the conversation?
Certainly. And, for US listeners, as a customer, we're in the healthcare industry and we work with providers, but as the unique thing is we're all patients too. We all have and want access to medical care. And we understand sometimes the experience as a patient in the healthcare system can be sometimes confusing, right? Whether it be financial or clinical or whatever, right?
We could have a whole episode on that on another show for sure.
Exactly. But the U.S. healthcare system is incredibly unique in that it provides fantastic care, yet it has these economic challenges for people getting access to it, the cost, understanding what the costs are, et cetera. So we try to take that same knowledge to apply to our customers to make it as easy as possible for them to do business with Craneware. We're a publicly traded company, so financial performance is a big part of our success. But it's always, I would say, a lagging indicator, right? If you do the right things, if you have the right value and vision and you're executing and rallying the team to that cause, then your financial results are going to be the lagging indicator, the outputs of that focus. So we try to make sure all the experience that we do with our customers, how we communicate with them, how we treat them, and their experience and brand on Craneware is certainly favorable. And we have literally world-class net promoter scores. We have other specific product areas where we measure through third-party independent organizations that we rank in some world-class scoring in terms of customer success, customer loyalty, and customer experience. But you're right, even down to the invoice, the way they handle an accounts receivable or accounts payable question, whatever it might be, is certainly important to the entire customer experience.
It's story time, and this growth story is about search engine marketing. Okay, so the story revolves around eSub, a project management SaaS company specifically for subcontractors. Even though eSub had incredible customer retention, they struggled with growth. Being a niche service, they discovered that there was little demand expressed for their solutions within search engines. To take on this challenge, eSub hired Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. After refining targeting, pre-qualifying clicks with an ad copy, and developing custom landing pages, Directive was able to increase eSub's marketing qualified leads by 71%, while decreasing their cost per lead by 65%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
Let's circle back to what you were talking about, Mark, with that consistent message. As you and I were chatting offline, you echoed something I've heard from other marketing leaders, and that's the CMO or the marketing leader's dream is to have everybody in the organization understand the mission, the vision, the value prop of the company, and be able to communicate that consistently. So with some of the opportunities that you guys have with different cultures, different time zones, a distributed team, what are some of the ways that you tackle on a regular basis? Because it's not something that you just, we've arrived. Now everyone can communicate the value prop across the organization, because that changes, people change. Can you speak to some of the things that you've done tactically and you maybe have empowered your team to do to try and get better there? I think none of us are ever, 100%, but some of the ways that you have helped to improve that at Craneware that other marketing leaders might be able to learn from.
I think it's a great question, and it's a difficult challenge because as a marketer, anyone who leads marketing or is involved in marketing, I think one of your goals is, and you may not ever get asked this, but it's really one of your goals is you want everybody in the company to have the same answer to the questions of what does your company do, how do you do it, and why are you different, right? And if you haven't answered those three questions and haven't socialize those answers across your organization, I think it's a great challenge and opportunity for you to do that, because you want, regardless of the role, whether it be an individual contributor, a chief executive, or your sales team, your customer management team, an engineering team, your product functions, whatever they are, you want them to have that same answer. So we try to do that through constant communication. Of course, we have obviously cultural and time zone challenges. We have a great internal web-based program that we communicate with across the organization. It's an intranet. We call it Core. And we have the ability to post success stories, internal and external customer success stories there. We can post announcements, upcoming events, but we can also continue to brand ourselves through that opportunity. We've now just moved that into a mobile application, so everybody has a subset of that content on their phone, because we're always looking at our phone. So we now have the ability to communicate through that. We create a strategic theme program every year where we announce here's the top 4 or 5 headline objectives that we want to accomplish as a company. And we create a printed document like a customer brochure, and we create that and give that to every employee, whether they're there at the beginning of the year or they join us throughout the year. And on that document, we get to do a little marketing, and we list the answer to those 3 questions that I just described on there as well. We talk about what we do. We talk about some of our key quotes, some of our key thoughts and messages that we want to stay on message with. So we do it digitally, we do it verbally, and we do it literally in print. And we do it as often as we can to try to keep everybody in line with the message.
That makes a lot of sense, Mark. When you look at marketing's role to not only help the market and your prospective customers understand what you do, how you do it, why you're different, but making sure that you do that same thing internally, you have to apply the principles of good marketing, clear messaging. You've got to do it in a variety of channels, which you guys are doing in print and on mobile. It reminds me of something I took away from the 4 Disciplines of Execution, a great operational book that we went through as a team here at Sweetfish. And it talks about you need a visible scorecard that people can look to. You're not so much talking about metrics, but the objectives and those things, keeping those in front of people and visible through the mobile app that's connected to your intranet and those printed pieces. So I can definitely see how those are valuable and how folks can, put their own spin on that and use what you're saying there. As we were chatting a little bit offline, you mentioned, Mark, that you guys have an internal podcast or an internal communications system that you're using, some audio or video to be able to keep everybody in the loop. Can you speak to that project a little bit, how it came about and how maybe that has helped? Because I think maybe some folks could take some ideas from that strategy of internal communications, getting everybody on the same page, which again, increases and improves the customer experience, which you guys are obviously doing a great job at.
Sure. Well, we just this past year have been in the process of celebrating our 20th anniversary So we had actually a Craneware Celebrate event where we brought the entire company together for several days to be able to share successes, look at our history, but more importantly, share our vision for the future and create team building and relationships that would last well into the next several years. And as part of that, the run up to that, we were doing podcasts. We call them Craneware Conversations, where we would take individuals and regardless of the role and just give them 10 to 12 minutes of a podcast to introduce themselves, talk about their personal and professional interests, their background, what Craneware means to them, et cetera. So post that event, we've extended that and continued that with what we now call Craneware Conversations, which are a combination of podcasts with individuals. And then once a quarter, we also do a live recorded webinar with 3 or 4 guests where we just talk about their role in the company, what their excitement about being part of Craneware is, and a little bit about their personal life and their career. So it creates a way to connect people that we work with on a daily basis. We probably send emails, we get on a Skype call. We have to ask them a favor. I always think it's better if you have to ask somebody a favor, which we're inevitably going to have to ask somebody in our company a favor or help because the situation will arise. It's better to have some type of connection with them before you have to start reaching out for those favors. And these are just ways that we can do that. We can cross the ocean. We can cross the time zone difference, the cultural differences by connecting the company through these conversations. And once you know someone's story, it's much easier to understand who they are, what they are, and your human nature says it's much more willing to want to work with them as a team member going forward. So those are some of the things we've done to continue that culture of conversation and connection.
I love that, Mark. I mean, as we've talked about, culture is going to impact the customer experience. We obviously here at Sweetfish talk a lot about why podcasts work to help you connect with your customers. I think you make a great case here in how you can build connections between your team members, especially if you are distributed. On that note, if anybody listening to this works in or leads a distributed team or a team with multiple locations, you may want to check out the Distributed podcast. I forget the name of the host and who puts that on, but if you search Apple Podcasts or your podcast player for Distributed, it's not one we're involved with, but it's one as a remote team here at Sweetfish that several of our team members have gotten value from. And one of the things I heard in a recent episode really echoes what you were saying here, Mark, is that when you work remotely and you're messaging Slack and email with your coworkers, when you only know them digitally, you kind of have this mental picture of them that may or may not be 100% accurate, and you don't necessarily have that same connection. So anyway, if you have a remote or distributed team, that you can build stronger connections, more understanding across your employee base, the stronger culture that you're going to have, and leading back to today's topic of customer experience, it's going to ripple out to your customers as well. So I love the way that we wrapped up on that today, Mark, with some good tactical advice for folks. Mark, if anybody listening to this would like to stay connected with you or reach out, ask any follow-up questions, marketing leader may be intrigued by some of the things that you're talking about here and would like to pick your brain a bit, what's the best way for them to connect with you or reach out?
Certainly. You can find me at Craneware. I'm on our website. You can follow our company on Twitter at Craneware. On LinkedIn, we have a page, a community page. I'm also on LinkedIn at Mark Montgomery. I also have my own Twitter. It's at Craneware CMO, and happy to DM or interact with anybody there, and happy to share ideas and learn ideas of things that you guys may be doing that would certainly be helpful for us. But appreciative for the time today, Logan. Appreciate the opportunity to spend some time and share with everybody.
Absolutely, Mark. I really appreciate you sharing your unique perspective, chatting marketing and customer experience today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.